Welcome back to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Love series. This time we're diving deep into a case that really shook India in 2020. It all starts with a wedding in Ahmedabad.
A joyous wedding
Yeah.
that was completely destroyed by just awfulness, violence.
It's a story of love and obsession, and a crime that left a family and a community just reeling.
This case really digs into like the worst parts of us, when love becomes dangerous.
Yeah, and possessive.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine like a beautiful wedding celebration,
Huh.
the bright colors and the
Oh,
music,
yeah.
the laughter of family and friends.
Mhm.
And then, picture that joy just being ripped away. When the bride, Nisha Patel, is found murdered on her wedding day.
It's just heartbreaking, and it brings up so many questions. Like, how could this happen? Who would do such a thing?
Right, and those are the exact questions that we'll be kind of digging into today as we uncover the story of Nisha Patel, her dreams that were cut short,
Yeah.
the man whose obsession turned deadly.
So to understand this tragedy, we have to understand Nisha. She was a bright 26-year-old accountant, and from everything we've learned, she was just full of life, loved by her family and friends.
It sounds like she had so much to look forward to. Was she excited for the wedding?
Absolutely. Nisha was completely in love with her fiancé, Arjun Mehta. He was a software engineer. And the wedding was like the culmination of years of planning
Oh.
and dreams for their future.
It's just so sad to think that her future was stolen from her.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the man she was going to marry?
Sure. So Arjun seemed like a really kind and supportive partner, devoted to Nisha, excited to start their life together.
It's unimaginable what he must have gone through finding that out. On their wedding day, what about Nisha's family? What were they like?
They were a close family. Nisha was incredibly close to her parents and her siblings. They were so happy about the wedding and really involved in all the preparations.
So we have this picture of this young woman, deeply loved, about to get married, surrounded by a supportive family. Where does the darkness come into this story?
Well, unfortunately, the darkness came in the form of Ravi Chauhan,
Okay,
Nisha's ex-boyfriend.
an ex-boyfriend. So this wasn't random. This
Yeah.
was someone from her past.
Exactly. Nisha and Ravi had a brief relationship a few years before, but it ended because he was controlling.
That's never a good sign. Was there any indication that he might become violent?
Well, there wasn't any physical violence during their relationship, but his controlling behavior was definitely like a red flag. It seems like he was possessive and had a really hard time with the breakup.
So how did Ravi react when he found out about Nisha's engagement?
His behavior took a really dark turn. He started sending messages, at first just expressing heartbreak, but then it escalated to accusations of betrayal and threats.
Oh, wow. It sounds like Nisha and her family knew that this was dangerous. Did they try to protect themselves?
They did. They were so concerned by Ravi's behavior that they filed a police complaint and got a restraining order against him.
It's tragic that even with a restraining order, this still happened.
It really shows how hard it can be to predict these situations, especially when someone is fixated like that. It also shows the limits of the law when dealing with someone like that.
It's scary to think about his obsession building. As the wedding day got closer, can you tell us more about what happened on that day?
It was December 12th, 2020, the day that should have been the start of Nisha's married life. But it became the day her life was tragically cut short.
Take us to that morning. Paint a picture of what happened.
Okay, so it was a really busy scene at the Patel house. Everyone was running around getting ready. The air was filled with excitement. But when Nisha didn't come down for breakfast, her family went to check on her.
I can't imagine what they were thinking when they realized something was wrong.
It must have been just awful. They found her lifeless body in her bedroom.
It's hard to even think about that scene. Can you describe it for us?
The room was a mess, showing signs of a struggle. Nisha was still in her wedding dress, which just made the violence even more shocking.
I can only imagine the shock and grief her family must have experienced.
It was just unimaginable heartbreak. A celebration turned into a nightmare. The day that was supposed to be filled with joy and new beginnings became a day of mourning and unanswered questions.
Knowing that Ravi had been threatening Nisha, the police must have immediately suspected him.
You're absolutely right. Given his history of obsessive behavior and the restraining order, Ravi was the immediate focus of the investigation.
It's unbelievable that someone could go to such lengths, driven by such a dark obsession. What happened next? Did the police find evidence linking Ravi to the crime scene?
They did. Forensic investigators carefully went through the crime scene, and they found a lot of evidence that pointed to Ravi.
What kind of evidence did they find?
Well, his fingerprints were found on the murder weapon, and on the bedroom door, so he was definitely there.
That's pretty damning evidence. Was there anything else that corroborated his involvement?
Yeah, they found bloodstains on his clothing. That matched Nisha's blood type.
Wow. It's a chilling reminder of how forensic science can unravel even the most carefully planned crimes. Did they uncover any digital evidence, like the threatening messages you mentioned earlier?
They did. The police got a hold of a bunch of threatening messages that Ravi had sent to Nisha's phone in the days leading up to the wedding.
What did those messages say?
Some of them were him begging her to reconsider the marriage. Others were full of rage, accusing her of betrayal and making threats about what would happen if she went through with it.
It's clear that his obsession had reached a dangerous level, where he felt entitled to control her life and choices. Did the police apprehend Ravi quickly?
They did. Within 24 hours of finding Nisha's body, the police tracked Ravi down to a relative's house and arrested him. Faced with all of the evidence against him, Ravi confessed to the murder.
His confession must have been crucial for the prosecution.
It was. Ravi's confession, along with the forensic evidence and witness testimonies, painted a very clear picture of a man driven by dangerous obsession. That led him to commit this horrible act of violence.
What was Ravi's explanation for his actions?
He claimed that he'd acted out of love, that he couldn't stand the thought of Nisha marrying someone else. He tried to make himself look like the victim of his emotions, consumed by grief and despair.
It's classic, how perpetrators of violence often try to shift the blame,
Right.
minimize their responsibility. Did the prosecution see through his attempts to justify his actions?
Oh, absolutely. The prosecution argued that Ravi's actions were totally planned out and driven by a possessiveness and a refusal to accept her rejection. They emphasized that his so-called love was nothing more than a dangerous obsession that led him to take a life.
It's a powerful reminder that love should never be about control
Right.
or possession,
Right.
but about respect, freedom, and mutual understanding. What was the public's reaction to this case?
The Ahmedabad Wedding Day Murder shocked all of India, and people were horrified by the brutality of the crime and the senseless loss of a young woman with so much potential.
It makes sense that a case like this would get people's attention and start important conversations about these big issues.
Yeah, for sure. This case brought to light the dangers of stalking and harassment and the issue of toxic masculinity. It made people confront the reality that these things can turn violent.
So this case wasn't just about one crime. It sparked a bigger discussion about the need for change in society.
Exactly. It became a reason to talk about early intervention and supporting victims of stalking and harassment, and the need for stronger laws to protect women from violence.
It's encouraging to hear that something good came out of this tragedy. Can you tell me more about the trial? How did it unfold?
Well, the trial started in early 2021, and it immediately became huge news. The prosecution had a ton of evidence, forensic reports, witness testimonies, and Ravi's confession, and they argued that the murder was premeditated and driven by his obsessive need to control Nisha's life.
It sounds like a strong case. What about the defense? What was their approach?
Ravi's defense team had a really tough job with all the evidence against him. They tried to paint him as a man driven to despair by heartbreak, someone who acted without thinking.
So they were trying to argue that the murder was a crime of passion,
Right.
rather than premeditated. Did that work? Did they sway the jury?
It did not. The jury saw right through it. And in the end, they rejected the defense's arguments.
It sounds like justice was served. What was the verdict?
In mid-2021, Ravi Chauhan was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. The judge, when he delivered the sentence, talked about how Ravi's actions were a horrible example of what happens when obsession goes unchecked.
That's a strong message from the court. It shows how seriously they take these crimes and sends a clear message that violence from possessiveness won't be tolerated.
Did Nisha's family speak out after the verdict?
Yeah, they did. Nisha's family was obviously devastated, but they were so brave throughout the whole trial. They gave victim impact statements, talking about their grief and asking for stricter laws to protect women from stalking and harassment.
Well, their strength in the face of such a tragedy is really inspiring. It sounds like they've turned their loss into a mission to advocate for change and prevent this from happening to others. Absolutely. Nisha's parents have become real advocates for tougher laws and better support systems for victims of domestic violence. Their work has raised awareness about these issues and started important conversations.
It's a testament to their love for Nisha and their determination to honor her memory.
It is. It shows that even in the darkest times, hope and resilience can still come through.
This case shows us that what we think of as romantic love can sometimes be something much darker. Obsession, possessiveness, and not accepting rejection. can have terrible consequences.
It's a warning about recognizing the warning signs in relationships and dealing with unhealthy behaviors early on.
It also highlights how important it is for society as a whole to challenge harmful norms and create a culture where respect, equality, and healthy boundaries are the most important things. We can honor Nisha's memory by working together to prevent future tragedies.
I agree. By supporting victims pushing for stronger laws and promoting healthy relationships, we can work towards a world where love is celebrated and not used as a weapon.
This has been a really moving and insightful look into a case that has had a huge impact on India and the world.
It reminds us that even though we can't change the past, we can learn from it and work towards a future where these kinds of tragedies are less likely to happen.
Thank you for sharing your insights with us.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Ahmedabad Wedding Day Murder. We hope that Nisha's story reminds us to be aware of the signs of unhealthy relationships and to speak out against stalking and harassment. If you or someone you know is experiencing these issues, please reach out for help. There are resources available, and you don't have to go through this alone. For more deep dives into twisted love stories and other true crime cases, make sure to follow CrimePod Castle. We put out new episodes every week, and we'd love for you to join our community. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content, behind-the-scenes stuff, and more. As we finish this episode, we'll leave you with something to think about. What can we do both individually and as a society to challenge harmful relationship dynamics and create a safer world for everyone? Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and as always, stay vigilant.
It did not. The jury just didn't buy it.
So justice was served in this case. What was the final verdict?
In the middle of 2021, Ravi Chauhan was found guilty of murder, and they sentenced him to life in prison. The judge, when he announced the sentence, he really condemned Ravi's actions. He said it was a horrific example of what happens when obsession takes over.
That's powerful. Did Nisha's family say anything after the verdict?
They did. They were heartbroken, of course, but they were also incredibly strong during the trial. They gave those victim impact statements, talking about their grief and pleading for stronger laws to protect women from stalking and harassment.
It's amazing how they found the strength to do that. In the face of such a tragedy, it's like they've turned their pain into a mission to prevent this from happening to anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. Nisha's parents have become like these outspoken advocates for tougher laws against stalking and better support systems for victims of domestic violence. Their work has really brought attention to these issues.
It's incredible how they're honoring Nisha's memory.
It really is. It shows that even in the darkest times, there can be hope.
This case is a stark reminder that sometimes what looks like love can be something much darker. Obsession, possessiveness, the inability to accept rejection, these things can have devastating consequences.
It's a lesson for all of us to pay attention to the red flags in our relationships and to address those unhealthy behaviors before it's too late.
And it also highlights how important it is for society to challenge those harmful norms,
Right.
and to create a culture where respect, equality, and boundaries are paramount. We can honor Nisha's memory by working together to prevent these tragedies from happening again.
Absolutely. By supporting victims, advocating for change, and promoting healthy relationships, we can make a difference.
This has been such an emotional and insightful look into this case that has impacted so many people.
It reminds us that while we can't change the past, we can learn from it and work towards a better future.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Ahmedabad Wedding Day Murder. We hope Nisha's story serves as a powerful reminder to be aware of the warning signs of unhealthy relationships and to speak out against stalking and harassment. If you or someone you know is experiencing these issues, please reach out for help. You don't have to go through this alone. For more deep dives into twisted love stories and other true crime cases, be sure to follow CrimePod Castle. We release new episodes every week, and we'd love for you to join our community. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights, and more. As we wrap up this episode, we want to leave you with a question to think about. What steps can we take both as individuals and as a society to challenge harmful relationship dynamics and create a safer world for everyone? Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and as always, stay vigilant.